they're rattled by him, and for good reason, because a lot of the proposals that he's made display either ignorance of world affairs or a cavalier attitude.
President Obama at a summit in Japan relaying the concern of other world leaders about Donald Trump. And it's time now for our Sunday group. Fox News senior political analyst Brit Hume, Susan Page from USA Today, syndicated columnist George Will, and Ron Fournier of the National Journal, author of the new book, Love That Boy. It is a perfect gift for Father's Day.
Well, thank you very much.
There you go. Brit, some people were upset that the president criticized Trump while he was on a foreign visit at an international summit, bringing up the old axiom, which seems kind of quaint now, that politics stops at the water's edge. First of all, were you offended by what by what Obama had to say?
Oh, I wasn't offended.
And secondly, let me get the questions out. One, were you offended? And two, now that Obama's approval rating is back up over 50% for the first time in a long time, how effective do you expect him to be for the Democrats in this election?
Well, he'll be effective to the extent that his approval rating remains high. I mean, there is a very high correlation between an incumbent president's approval rating and the success of his party's nominee in the fall. So if that stays up, that's a significant plus in Secretary Clinton's favor as she runs here. Whether he will be how effective he'll be out on the stump is anybody's guess, but the approval rating does correlate with winning, and that's obviously a key factor here. And as for whether I was offended, no, I was not offended, because that custom of politics stopping at the water's edge is long gone. And besides that, he got a question which he answered in a way that Trump managed easily to turn into a talking point in his own favor by saying he wants these foreign leaders to be rattled because they've been getting a free ride off us for too long. So that's all good. That's a negotiator's stance.
Trump not only took incoming from the president, he also took it from Democratic Senator Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts over his statement in 2006 that if the housing bubble burst, he'd be able to make some money. Here she is.
And routes for people to get thrown out of their house. A small, insecure money grubber who doesn't care who gets hurt so long as he makes a profit off it.
Well, Trump had, Susan, an answer for that. He said that Warren has a big mouth, and he called her Pocahontas, referring to the fact that she once claimed American Indian heritage.
Still claims. She's never backed off that. She says that she still believes that to be the case. You know, she figured out how to do something that eluded 16 Republican rivals, which is how to get under Donald Trump's skin. And she's not yet endorsed Hillary Clinton. She's the only woman senator who hasn't endorsed Hillary Clinton. But she is doing Hillary Clinton a world of good by engaging with Donald Trump and making him respond. I think she has figured out how to irk him.
And irking is good.
Irking is good if you're running against somebody and you want to get them a little bit off their game. I'm not sure how valuable it is to call her Pocahontas. And it doesn't seem to me that does her a lot of damage. She doesn't seem to mind that.
How about Big Mouth?
Well, you know. I mean, she's somebody who has demonstrated an ability to throw a punch, and that's to the good of the Democrats, it seems to me.
George, I want to go slightly bigger picture than Big Mouth and Pocahontas, because Trump was asked this week where he sees the GOP in 5 years, and he said, I love that question, and he said, I see it as a workers' party of people who have not gotten a raise in 15 years, I think he said, who feel angry and left behind. Could he possibly be reshaping the Republican Party?
I think that's his obvious aim. 50 weeks ago, when he began running for president, he had a verbal tic that he subsequently suppressed. He used to be talking to an arena full of people. He'd say, the Republicans say this, or you Republicans say this and that. That's perfectly natural for someone who's changed his party registration at least 5 times in the last 20 years or so. When asked recently about his many deviations from conservatism, he sort of shrugged and said, it's called the Republican Party, not the Conservative Party. So it seems very clear that he intends to make it a not conservative party, at least as conservatism has been defined. If he means to make it by a workers' party, the party of those downscale, meaning non-college educated white voters, he can do that, but that's nowhere near a majority. Now, he may be counting on independents. A decade ago, 30% of Americans said they're independents. Today, 42% do. But then you get back to his strange idea of addition, I guess, by subtraction. You talked about Susan Martinez. He has a problem with women, Hispanics, and Republicans. So he attacks a Republican Hispanic woman governor, forgetting the fact that Mitt Romney got 93% of self-described Republicans and lost.
You know, I want to pick up on this because I was fascinated that Trump did it, and even more interested in the fact that you got a kind of aggressive pushback today, defense, from Corey Lewandowski. I mean, what do you make of the idea that the I guess now unofficial Republican nominee, the man who's clinched the nomination, 1,237 plus votes, is going after Susana Martinez and Nikki Haley and a bunch of other Republicans?
These two things are linked. Set aside the fact that a workers' party has 20th century bearings in the socialist movement. Nowadays, what he's talking about is a dog whistle to the white working class angry voters. And when he's taking on Susana Martinez, when he's taking on a female Hispanic governor, that's part of his play to the grievance vote among white male voters. He's trying to divide us, and he's trying to create this new Republican coalition that would be mostly white, would be mostly angry white males, that the math does not add up, as George says, unless he completely reshapes the electorate. We would have to have a completely different kind of electorate come out in November than we've had in the past. Somehow you would have to manage to not only increase the white vote, but while not increasing the Hispanic and African-American vote. I don't know how you do that. Maybe he's figured a way.
Chris, note the contrast between how he handled Paul Ryan's initial reaction when Ryan said he was not prepared to endorse him, and indeed he isn't yet prepared to endorse him. At first he lashed out. Remember, he said, you know, I don't support Ryan's agenda. Then he apparently thought better of that tactic and sat down with Ryan and apparently is having continuing conversations with him, and you can sense Ryan moving in Trump's direction. That first impulse appeared to be at work in his attack on Susana Martinez. He attacks her. But, as you just pointed out,
she said she was too busy to show up at his rally.
That's right. She didn't show up at his rally, so he took that as a slight, as he had what Ryan said, and lashed out at her, which has been his traditional, habitual way of dealing with things. But politics, as George has suggested, is always and everywhere about addition and not subtraction. So I think it's a mistake, and I was surprised, as you suggested, that Corey Lewandowski doubled down on it today, because it just doesn't make any sense. It'd be so much easier for him to win her over.
And you can tell they're living in a fantasy land
when
he says things
like... You say
like...
they're living in a fantasy land. He is the Republican nominee.
They are living in a fantasy land. You had him on your show, and you called him on this. He said we're winning the Hispanic vote. They are living in a fantasy land. They're not winning the Hispanic vote. And the way you go after him is exactly the way Susan suggested. And exactly what Elizabeth Warren is doing. When you have a playground bully, a bully in the playground, you punch him in the mouth. And you punch him in the mouth, and you punch him in the mouth. Get him back on the heels. He's obviously very thin-skinned and a very small-minded man. When you say things to him like, I'm too busy to show up, if he was a bigger man, that wouldn't bother him all. But boy, it gets under his skin. When you call him small, like Elizabeth Warren is, that touches him in a place that most people
can handle. I mean, for all of this talk, Susan, he's tied in the polls with Hillary Clinton. I mean...
So here's the test.
We do have to reflect the reality that it seems to be selling.
Not only is he tied, or almost tied in the polls with Hillary Clinton, he has cleared the Republican field and clinched the Republican nomination while she has not. He did that in May. She won't do that until June. She still has a serious challenge in California. So you don't want to dismiss Donald Trump, but the question is, has he rewritten all the rules? He rewrote all the rules for the primaries. Does that mean he has rewritten the rules for a general election when it comes to things like having a campaign infrastructure across the country? Because she's building one, and he is way behind.
So let me just quickly ask about that, and we have to go. When I asked Corey Lewandowski, and he basically said, hey, we got 1/10 of our staff, and we're winning, do you buy that?
So I think historically you'd say, no, that's not going to work. But he's been a different kind of candidate this year, so you don't dismiss it out of hand.
And you can take his candidacy seriously, but not take him as a person seriously. That's where I am.
Well, I think we probably should do both. Anyway, panel, we have to take a break here. We'll see you a little later.